Chapter 70-72. Rei's adaptation of rock clone jutsu ravaged the Iwagakure, doing nasty pranks all around while using their numerical advantage to the fullest. Rei had actually prepared around 1,500 of these rock monkey clones, so some parts of the village were completely overrun. Rei was very careful when planning this little surprise, and spent the entire night going through every bit of knowledge he gained from Barbo's interrogation about the defenses and setup of Iwagakure. These were pivotal in his quest for justice. That was the reason why the rock clones could rampage for an hour and still, no organized resistance was, well, organized. The places that were hit first had either insufficient personnel and were too preoccupied to send a message about their problems with a request of reinforcements, or it was a place that was out of hand, and it would take time for such requests to reach the Kage Tower. And when they did, the tower would be buried in large quantities of them, so it would be a pain in the ass to react. These monkeys were failed attempts at rock clone jutsu. But even then, just because in the eyes of others this was a failure at creating a rock clone, it didn't mean that it didn't have its uses. After all, failures were a perfectly usable jutsu too. They just didn't have the desired effect, hence were called failures. Just a bit of deformity through tweaking while creating a rock clone and voila, Rei had a fully functioning clone that did not look like him, therefore his identity was safeguarded. The best part. Henge could be seen through. The rock clones could not, as there was literally nothing to be seen through. The rock monkeys were just that. Pile of rocks in the form of a monkey wearing Hokage attire that was held together and moved by chakra and initial intent of the user. Even the coloring on them was done through chakra. It was obvious they were clones, but it would be next to impossible to discern who made them. But they functioned exactly as normal rock clones, except Rei was quite good at earth release. He obviously added a bit of a bonus and made them all enhanced with earth chakra. They would be a terror to take down after that. That's why Rei spent an entire week prior to their mission making these clones and filling 2 whole scrolls with them to the brim. It was his small personal portable army, Sasori style. While various parts of Iwagakure started to have problems with Hokage monkeys, Rei and Konan used these exact parts to slip through the village. The monkeys always started rampaging, and then, both Rei and Konan would henge to civilians while adjusting their chakra reserves to slip through. They were obviously seen by ninja and even other civilians, but the people had more pressing matters than to look closer. Even if henge could be seen through, it would need a deeper look even if the person is experienced. It was all in the details. Details that nobody had time to look at. Part by part, street by street, they advanced in the middle of the chaos until they reached their first objective. The headquarters of the explosion corps, quite nearby the Kage Tower. It actually took them 30 minutes to follow the monkey clones up here, and it was just in time. The IWA shinobi started to realize this was not just some common prank, nor anything that was meant well. Too much damage was caused by it to be anything but hostility, and they started to react in kind. The ninja of Iwagakure started carefully fighting back, trying to prevent more damage from being caused to their village. Rei and Konan entered the wide-open door to the building that was half broken, clearly due to too much force applied as someone banged on them. They casually walked through the hall, holding hands while noting the empty reception with the side of their eyes. They walked in without a care in the world, as if they owned the place. All around them was a mess caused by the wild rock monkey clones. The shelves were overturned, the papers all over the floor, the furniture was broken, and the place had clear signs of struggle. They are quite effective, Konan stated. The surroundings look like a war zone, and yet, we both know the monkey clones would at most cause a few bruises. Tell me, why again did you order them to not kill people? She frowned as she didn't understand Rei's reasons for that. Iwagakure sent 50 ninjas to kill them. If anything, they should be out for their blood. That's easy, Rei quipped. I plan to use this in the future. Maybe not the exact same variant, but close, and people will eventually come to know the user is me. I don't need to be known as the man who massacred IWA shinobi in their own village. That would paint an incredible target on me, and it wouldn't be just IWA shinobi vying for my blood, Rei said, trying to portray the situation to Konan. She might have been incredibly strong and very resourceful and innovative, but she didn't really have the brain for thinking what her actions would cause in the future. But, won't they actually resent you anyway? Konan asked with a frown. Rei was basically trashing the village, so she didn't think not killing would actually save him from being hunted. At her question, Rei smirked knowingly. Oh, they will, but this would inspire respect at my ability to do it and a healthy amount of fear. I have no delusions that I won't be in the upper tiers of bingo book due to the reward IWA would offer for my head for it, but they would also not be out for blood. Merely butthurt like a sullen child. They may pout, rave and rake, but they won't go too much out of their way to get me. That would be a waste of resources for such a small matter, after all, Rei said, but seeing Konan's furrowed brows he sighed, stopped for a moment, and as she turned to him, he patted her head. Don't worry your little pretty head over it. Konan slowly nodded. As they walked through the Explosion Corps headquarters, they suddenly were stopped by a battered man with a tired look. "Who are you?" he asked. Ray blinked at him in confusion for a second before promptly facepalming. "Of course." He turned to Conan, who tilted her head. "We are still wearing civilian attire," he told her, making her go, "Oh. I knew I forgot something." He then turned towards the man and gave him a thumbs up. "Thanks, man." Obviously, the man didn't know what to think, but the display managed to make him put his guard up very quickly. Weird was not good. Weird was dangerous. But he didn't have the time to ponder further as from behind, one rock monkey suddenly ran into him, flinging his body forward. Both Conan and Ray flinched as they saw him roll on the floor, clearly breaking something. The man didn't wake up after that. Ray gulped as he turned to Conan. "That was an accident," he told her. "That can't be taken as a kill." Conan showed him an unimpressed look. After such a lengthy lecture about no killing, and then he goes and makes a man into a living ragdoll. "Sure, whatever suits you best," she dryly said, making Ray scowl. How should he know the man was so fragile? Anyway, Ray averted his gaze. "Let's continue," he shamelessly exclaimed and started dragging chuckling Conan forward. It was time to get what they came for. They finally reached the storage room with explosives, and Ray grinned. "Now, let's see the stash of the best demolitionists." He giddily hopped towards the first crate he saw and stored it in his dimensional storage. "So many treasures," he stated with a shit-eating grin. The explosives and gear in the storage room were something extremely important and expensive. IWA guarded the knowledge about them almost as fiercely as Konoha guarded their bloodlines. And here they were, in a room full of them, and Ray was pretty sure somewhere amongst the pile of books Conan just stored is a manual on how to create them. They didn't really have the time to look into what they were storing into the dimension as they were pressed for time. 10 minutes later, it was finally done, and Ray wiped imaginary sweat from his forehead. "Well." He turned to Conan with a nasty smirk as he gestured towards one unstood crate. "Shall we give IWA a greeting?" For the last 10 minutes, the monkey clones were trying to chase people away from the building, and now, it was empty bar Conan and Ray. Getting his meaning, Conan showed a slight but very telling smile. 5 minutes passed and the duo was safely waiting on the roof of a building 2 streets away from the headquarters of the Explosion Corps when the fireworks started. The entire building the Corps used since their establishment disappeared with a booming sound, leaving behind only a wide crater and deafened, bewildered IWA around it. This marked an hour since the beginning of mayhem in IWA, and in the Kage Tower, a certain old midget was currently staring at the paperwork strewn all over the floor with a longing, wistful look of utter horror. So far, Ray was satisfied with his self-imposed mission. Anoki rammed into a rock monkey, crushing it with the impact. His face instantly turned into a frown as he realized that it would be him on the floor if he didn't harden his body with earth chakra. The hardness of these nuisances was really on a different level. He could now understand why his ninja had so many problems with dispatching them. They were hard, small, and nimble enough to weave through attacks. Hitting them was a chore, and then one had to be sufficiently strong to break through the hardening. The most annoying part for IWA forces was the inability of using destructive jutsu since they were inside of their own village. Really, their only redeeming part is the likeness to the Hokage. They are all so hilarious. Anoki mumbled under his nose. The monkeys were actually really molded to look like a smaller, more furry version of old Hiruzen Sarutobi wearing the Hokage robes. Anoki kicked away another monkey, making it crumble into a pile of rock. His eyes narrowed as he noted 20 other monkeys turn to him, preparing to engage. This part, he was confused about it. Every time he defeated one, another would jump at him. Never 2 or 3. Always only 1. Always in 1 versus 1 in taijutsu. The other monkeys either prevented his ninja from intervening or plainly waited. He ordered most of his subordinates to go clean important spots, so he didn't have many of them, but it was still mind-boggling that the ones that were being suppressed enough to be unable to help. By now, Anoki had quite a clear picture of what was happening. "They are stalling for time," he gruffly stated. "I don't like this, not one bit." Anoki gritted his teeth as he continued fighting. As he was about to finish his 15th monkey, he suddenly heard it. The village shook with the deafening roar that reverberated through it. His eyes went wide. Gobi. Steam suddenly burst out and covered the eastern part of the village. A few moments earlier, Conan and Ray stood in front of a shabby house with a few holes in it. It was made out of wood and located in the eastern part of the village. The part that could be called slums and mostly used to house slaves or those of low societal status. It was also a part that was completely undisturbed by the current commotion, as there was just nothing of note there. This also conveniently meant that no ninja was as of now there, as every station patrol went to help with the disturbance in the village. "Are you sure this is it?" Conan asked skeptically. The house, if it could be called that, was something she would never imagine belonged to such a precious thing as a Jinchuriki. They were supposed to be quite valuable to their respective villages, no? Yes, I am positive. Ray nodded and opened the door. Walking inside, he saw the only room of the entire house. It was quite a clean and tidy place. Despite the shabby and battered furniture, it had kind of a cozy atmosphere signifying that someone clearly cared for it. In the corner of the room was an old bed and on it, a 12-year-old boy was currently happily sleeping. Well, wouldn't you look at that? Looks like we are quite lucky. Since he is sleeping, the next part will be quite peaceful. Ray quietly said and approached the snoring boy. He was a big one for his age. Not due to fat since the boy was obviously underfed. No, he was tall and wide, it was obvious he would grow up to be quite physically strong. Ray was quite baffled. This underfed large boy who was most likely lacking any form of affection would grow up to be a terror on the battlefield. The strongest steam user. All due to the beast inside of him. The boy was Han. The Jinchuriki of the Gobi. Ray approached his body and put his hand on the boy's belly all the while Conan vigilantly watched for any unnatural movement. Even now, she was making sure many of her paper slices were left behind for various purposes. Ray might be able to see more into what future reactions would people have if he did this or that. She didn't understand that, but it was fine. What she understood was that being prepared was important, and since she had an opportunity, she took it. After all, since she was in IWA now, why not fill it to the brim with explosive tags? Ray's hand reached towards the seal on the boy. Not unlike when he did this with Kushina, Ray put a paper with his chakra storage seal onto the boy's belly and pushed his chakra into it, making it reach the boy's seal. His eyes snapped open even though he didn't remember closing them, and Ray found himself inside of the seal. He saw a cage, not. Ray blinked and groaned. Don't you tell me this is some bullshit willpower seal. He face-bombed only to freeze when he got an answer. Yes, human. This is exactly one of these. A calm voice resounded through the seal. Ray's shoulders sagged at that and he turned around with a peeved feeling inside of him. As his turn was finished, his eyes landed on the owner of the voice. Gobi. His lips twitched. Never thought a tailed beast would be willingly spending its time in its host. Ray amusedly stated, raising his eyebrow at the beast who was lazily lying in front of him with its eyes closed. The Gobi just raised his right eyelid up, boredly looking at Ray. You know what you just caused, don't you? He asked, ignoring Ray's previous statement. Ray sighed in exasperation. Of course, he did know. Due to this being a freaking willpower seal, the second I leave, the boy will go on a rampage. He gruffed out. I mean, how should I know the boy would have such a seal on himself? Ray started ranting. Which idiot actually puts this sort of seal on a kid? Much to Kokuo's amusement, he wildly gestured with his hands in agitation. How could anyone able making such a seal not understand the simple truth that a kid can't suppress a tailed beast with willpower? Ray shook his head. What kind of willpower could a kid have anyway? He huffed. Kokuo snorted. Yes. I totally agree. If I wanted, I could be out this instant. But you don't. You know Han won't be always a kid, don't you? One of these days, his willpower actually will be enough to keep you sealed away. Ray told Kokuo, who just shrugged uncaringly. The beast was clearly unhappy with the fact it was sealed but didn't mind being secluded, and the sealing actually did help him with that. Well, this was a nice talk, but I think your goal in coming here is fulfilled. It's time for you to go. Kokuo politely said, making Ray smile. Thank you for giving me your chakra. He slightly bowed towards the beast. He could feel that Kokuo clearly knew what was going on around its host and didn't mind sharing his chakra. Ray felt his chakra storage seal filling up too quickly for it to be forceful. After relaying his gratitude, he left the seal. The second he was out, he grabbed the chakra storing paper, twisted on his heel, and jumped towards Conan, grabbing her around her waist and heaving her up on his shoulder. He then used Kawarimi to gain distance from the boy who was now almost bathing in red chakra. He knew Han would go on a rampage, but it was not his problem. Most importantly, it was not him who applied such a half-assed and stupid seal on the boy. Ray could have stopped Han. Sure. But why should he? He didn't owe IWA nor its people anything. There just wasn't a benefit in it. But there definitely was a benefit in having the boy rampage. Ray entered a side alley and ran through the back streets until he was at least a few hundred meters away from the boy's position. It took him only a moment, and after he deemed his distance sufficient, he jumped up onto the roof, still holding Conan like a sack of potatoes. Conan's face was impassive throughout the entire experience, but it was obvious to Ray she didn't appreciate the way he carried her. He put her down on her own feet when he landed on the roof, just in time to see a huge cloud of superheated smoke go off in the distance. The boy will massacre the people, Conan stoically stated. It wasn't that she cared about IWA people, but she didn't like seeing kids killed. That, however, didn't mean she would not activate the numerous exploding tags and wipe the entire village off if it was needed. That only meant it would at best leave a sour taste in her mouth. She didn't even finish her sentence and Ray could already see her using her papers to evacuate many kids from the streets. Conan made sure to use small amounts despite it being slower. She prioritized being unseen, but she nevertheless helped the people. Yes. I already mentally ordered the closest rock monkeys to come and help to drag the people away, Ray said while he intently stared towards the place with the rampaging boy. It wouldn't be bad to make Iwagakure remember his help during this sudden rampage. It would probably win him some brownie points in the future when his identity comes to the light. That's the reason why he dropped a paper with a seal that would create a small barrier when he was running away. This barrier wouldn't hold the boy. Not when he already sported 3 new tails and a red chakra cloak. But it would give the necessary time for someone strong to come. And that was what Ray was waiting for. He knew exactly who would be the best candidate to stop the rampage. Now wouldn't it be awesome if Yanbi Jinchuriki showed up and leaked some chakra for me to study? Ray and Conan watched the boy clad in red chakra cloak ramming his 3 tails into the barrier Ray created. This is insane, Conan said. This was the first time she saw the strength of a rampaging Jinchuriki and she was not impressed at all. No, she was outright frowning as she realized she might be able to fight it, but it would be a tough fight. She instantly resolved herself to get even stronger. The chance of herself or worse, Ray being attacked by a Jinchuriki wasn't that high, but it was still there. No, she would have to get strong enough to face something like this with ease. It was all for protecting Ray, after all. The chakra is so dense it can physically maul things. Conan continued. The ground under him is charred, it must be quite hot too. Conan was saying this out loud just because she was bored. She and Ray were doing this quite often. They talked about things and pointed out the things the other missed, and in the end, they would reach a better conclusion. Ray obviously knew some of its properties, but even he found a few new things during the observation. The chakra is uncontrolled. The Gobi doesn't have actual control over it, he pointed out, making Conan nod. So the chakra acts on instinct. Is that what you want to say? She asked and crossed her arms with a frown. But that's an insane notion. Chakra is energy, it's not sentient. The tailed beasts are beings made of chakra. Ray hummed distractedly. As someone who knew his fair share in soul-based sealing, he had a clear idea of how that worked. It was the pivotal point in his tailed beast project, which was the reason why he was gathering the chakra of other tailed beasts. But even then, he was still stumped on how Hagoromo actually created 9 different and unique beings from one. It can't be that the 10 tails had a multiple personality disorder, can it? Conan was about to reply when suddenly, the barrier was shattered and the boy roared. 2 arms made of chakra stretched out of his back and started smashing the buildings around. For better or worse, the people in these buildings were long dead due to the steam the boy released at the start of his rampage, which cooked them almost instantly. The barrier bought at best 5 minutes, which both Ray and Conan used to evacuate most of the slums through either paper or rock monkeys, so the rampaging boy could safely smash as much as he liked without mauling anyone who wasn't already dead. There goes this part of the city, Ray muttered, completely unbothered as he sat up, his feet dangling down the edge of the roof. Conan sat next to him, quietly sneaking her hand into his as they together watched the boy dismantle the street with his chakra hands while analyzing the situation and the chakra usage. It was then that the new arrival appeared. From the sky, a small shadow descended right onto the back of the boy shrouded in dark red chakra, driving him into the ground before it quickly kicked off the back of the boy in order to jump away from him. This to be the right decision, as not a second after he did so, hot chakra arms pierced the spot his chest was located. Ray narrowed his eyes in displeasure as he saw who was the man who arrived. Contrary to his expectations, it wasn't Yanbi's Jinchuriki, but it was the Tsuchikage himself. It appears the Yanbi won't be appearing, he frowned bitterly. The Yanbi Jinchuriki would already appear if he was in the village. The fight between Inoki and Han started anew when Han sprang his body at the middle-aged midget, leaping at him like a wild animal. Inoki didn't try to block and instead jumped to the side, letting Han sail past him. Han impacted the building behind Inoki and created a new opening in its wall while the dust rose all around. Inoki carefully observed the dust-filled hole, waiting for Han to make a move when his eyes widened as a searing pain sprang up to his spine from his ankles. He suddenly found his world spinning as the chakra arm that burst from the ground and took hold of it flung his body through the street at breakneck speed, right into an opposite building. Inoki's body also created a hole. A moment later, both combatants could be seen exiting their respective holes. Han's rampaging form crouched on all four while growling, and Inoki was floating a few centimeters above the ground while his ankles were badly burned. He gritted his teeth and glared at Han's form. It was useless trying to talk to it. He knew he would have to punch the boy out of this stupor, and right now, he nevertheless found it to be an incredible pain in the ass. Inoki used his earth release, lightweight rock technique to fly up while Han started filling the space around him in dense steam, wrapping himself in it. Ray and Conan wondered what he was doing, but their question was answered shortly when the steam, in but a second, compressed even more and formed a small ball in front of the rampaging boy's mouth. Before Inoki could even widen his eyes, the ball was flung at insane speed in his direction. He barely managed to use earth release, rock skin, to shield himself. Both Ray and Conan could see a big explosion of superheated steam engulfing the sky. Inoki's body rushed out of the steam in a straight line towards the ground, making a small part of it disperse due to his sheer speed. He landed on one knee, his hand instantly landing on the ground as he shouted. Earth release, heaven-reaching pillar. From under Han's body, an earth pillar swiftly rose, pushing him into the sky before retreating back towards the ground. Han was now in the sky, and that was exactly what Inoki wanted. He pushed his battered, slightly burned body, and flew at his airborne opponent at breakneck speed, his hand reaching towards him. Inoki was hopeful when he saw his hand almost reach the boy, only for his hopes to be dashed when a fourth tail sprung up from behind the boy and slapped him downwards. As he was barreled towards the ground, he twisted his body and landed on his feet into a crouch. The force transmitted through his body nevertheless put a sizable dent onto the ground. A moment later, a large fist made out of smoke impacted the area, sending a shockwave all around. The battlefield stilled. The smoke started clearing, and Ray smiled helplessly as he saw the rumble that was previously the slums of Iwagakure. That was clever. He heard Conan calmly say and couldn't help but agree. Both were using their nature sensing to have a firm grasp on what was going on even inside the steam. The steam was now almost gone, only to be completely dispersed by a savage roar, revealing Inoki gasping for air as he stood above the boy who was still clad in chakra cloak, thrashing around but unable to lift himself from the ground. Yeah, he created a rock clone right during the first steam bomb attack, hit it, and now used it to land the rock weight technique onto the boy. This fight is over. With the amount of gravity on the boy, he would need to go into a five-tail state, and Kokuo doesn't want to be released, so he would prevent it. Inoki won. Ray stated. A pity Inoki decided not to use his dust style though. Conan stoically said as she peered towards the form of the old man. She wanted to see the fabled other Kakei Toda in existence. Well, you can't really blame him for that. Deserted part it may be, but this is still a part of his village. His dust techniques would completely finish it off. This damage, Ray pointed towards the destroyed buildings and cracked ground, will be easily repaired with earth jutsu. But if he leveled the area with dust release, the reconstruction would take a lot of money. Ray finished in a Kakuzu-like voice. He momentarily let go of Conan's hand and snaked his arm around her waist. Well, dear. It's time for us to leave. Looks like the second Jinchuriki of IWA won't be joining the party, so there is nothing more to be stolen here. He quipped, and Conan, with an amused smile, leaned towards him, pecking him on the cheek. You shouldn't be greedy. She weakly admonished him. They already gained a library worth of jutsu, all copies, so it wouldn't seem like the jutsu are missing. Then they stole quite a lot of valuables and money which will surely be noticed, and then the stash of the explosion core and a few documents about missions that could prove to be useful blackmail material. If she took into consideration the sample of Gobi's chakra, wanting more was just plain being greedy. Ray chuckled at that and shrugged. I am only a human. He said helplessly, but then turned to Conan, looking into her eyes. You are right. He stated and kissed her on the lips. They both pulled apart after a few moments, and with the last look towards the still struggling boy and tired Tsuchikage, they disappeared into Ray's dimension. Ray no longer cared about the following events and Conan. She gave one last discreet but telling glance in Inoki's direction as her lips were twisted in an amused and playful smirk. Ray rather not comment on, as he knew when she was about to pull a prank.